Welcome on in, guys. Tobin here with you. Thanks for checking out the channel. Hope everybody's doing fantastic, getting ready for the weekend. You want some Goosey's fuel? I think you want some Goosey's fuel. So, Goran Dragic's farewell game in Slovenia is coming up this weekend, and Chris Bosh, it was said that he was going to appear at the game. There was some talk, was he going to play? I don't know if he's playing or not. I don't think so, based on Chris Bosh and clearance for basketball. I'm not sure where that's at, although, I'm sure is a different pace playing in some kind of a charity game. But either way, he is there. He the Goran Dragić Foundation Instagram account and Twitter account had posted him arriving at the game. Chris Bosh is there. I think this is so damn cool because, first of all, it's a cool unifying circle moment for really one of the biggest what ifs in history, which is interesting with Goran, right? Because I would argue up to anybody who would hear me, that number 7 deserves to be in the rafters for Goran Dragić. People didn't want to hear me. People were like, he's not the greatest point guard. Tim Hardaway is the greatest point guard. And first of all, this is a silly thing. Like, I didn't understand that you had to be best in your position to get into the rafters. Second of all, it's closer than you think. It's a thin margin. I used to get in this argument with Leroy all the time because, Tim Hardaway finally in the Basketball Hall of Fame. I don't know if Goran Dragić will get into the Basketball Hall of Fame, but he, in my mind, deserved it. This guy was an all-star for the Miami Heat. He was one of their best players for half a decade. He was their leading scorer on a finals team. And really, it's interesting because it feels like Tim was also kind of in that realm of like what ifs with the Miami Heat, of like teams that got far but never got quite as far as you thought they would. And he's the only guy that's up in the rafters right now that doesn't have a championship. So it was cool on Udonis Haslem night. I believe it was they were sitting next to each other, and it was like, that's Heat history right there. That's really cool. But Goran is interesting because it does represent, he represents a what if, right? There are these elements of thinking about if things would have just broke the right way for Miami. They're both health related, and one of them has nothing to do with them, and the other one has everything to do with them. Because if you go back to when Goran was traded for, and the Miami Heat make the deal for Gogi, and they trade what they did to get him, and really at the time, it's funny, you look at those picks that they gave up for him. They gave up 2 first-round picks, which it was like 2 first-round picks. I remember Justin Hamilton, Hammond Swish was in the deal. Danny Granger, I think, was in the deal. But it was not a lot. Like the Heat, you were just like, wow, fleeced them. But, it was Danny Granger to the Phoenix Suns and 2 first-round picks. Zoran Dragić came back in the deal. And then in the summer, they end up signing him to a $90 million extension. And so, the Goran Dragić era began. But it began immediately with the news that Chris Bosh was done. That Chris Bosh, not hours after it was done, you get the news that Chris Bosh is in the hospital. That Chris Bosh's life is in danger. Like, Chris Bosh is dealing with these blood clots, and is wondering what the hell happened. And then you're in this crazy sense of like, all right, is he ever going to be able to play again? Is this going to be a thing? And I'm telling you, man, the feeling you had when this Goran Dragić deal went through before you got the news of Chris Bosh, for the kids who don't remember it, it's weird that I even have to bring this up because it's 10 years ago now. But I realize we got a lot of younger people who just maybe weren't there. But Team Petty was at its height here. We were all kind of operating in this realm of could the Miami Heat in any way beat the Cleveland Cavaliers to a title? Could the Miami Heat? LeBron had up. He had taken all the good stuff. He up and left to Cleveland. He got Kyrie. Everybody's talking about that. And everybody's happy, too. This is the thing. Everybody's laughing at Miami. Everybody is looking at the Heat and saying, you just lost all of your good stuff. Bandwagons you're all Cavaliers fans now. And really was the national narrative that was all around. it was not a great time. And you have this fantastic point guard that the Miami Heat trade for, and everybody's excited about it. This dude, and by the way, Goran Dragić, one of the reasons I have appreciation for him, this man made a stink, okay? One of the most decent, polite, just individuals you will come across in professional sports. This dude went in front of the microphones and in his second language, well, Gogi speaks a lot of languages. I don't know which one he learned second, but not in his first language, told the media, I don't trust the Phoenix Suns anymore. Made a stink like a pro. Not meek like Damian Lillard did. Not meek like people who don't want to just say what they want. Did it like a pro's pro and got his ass to Miami. And you really thought in that moment with Chris Bosh, with D. Wade, Luol Deng, Goran Dragić, and Hassan Whiteside emerging. You're like, oh, this team could do some things. This team could rock with the East. And, it just, you lose Chris Bosh, you lose a max player. You're just left in this limbo. And you can't do anything about it. The Heat were stuck. They had this giant chunk of their salary cap that they couldn't use because Chris Bosh couldn't play basketball. It was and you're fearing for like where is this going to go? And so Goran went from this like final piece to, all right, what's it going to be? And then you give it one last run the next year. Same thing happens, and that ends up being D. Wade's last year with the Miami Heat. Then Goran Dragić is like, oh, you had to wonder. Like, you go from this thing where you think you're the final piece of a championship puzzle, and then it's like, nah, never mind. Now you're playing with Dion Waiters and rookies and James Johnson and these guys who are kind of cast-offs. And, they end up being their own nice story, especially the backcourt of Dion Waiters and Goran Dragić was deadly. I mean, it's that second half that those guys had, 7-11, my God. I mean, they were something else. And you wonder with that season that the Miami Heat put forth, and then, it being like, all right, he really was a big catalyst into them not going into the tank, where that was a big debate. Should the Miami Heat tank? Should they not? But after that dust clears and he ends up here and he's with the first year of Jimmy Butler, that's the second big what if of his career, because this man was an absolute demon. He balled out in the bubble. It was good all year, but balled out in the bubble. And mind you, Goran had to take a big sacrifice that year. Goran, he did the go to the bench thing, right? That was a year they started Kendrick Nunn. They started Duncan Robinson, two undrafted, unheralded guys. One a rookie, one a second-year guy who was playing most of the year in Sioux Falls the year beforehand. And Goran, suppose got to take him to lunch, not happy about it. Said, hey, I want you to come off the bench this year. And then eventually, pandemic happens, go to the bubble, they make the switch. Goran's now the starter, and he's killing it, dude. He's mowing through the Pacers, he's mowing through the Bucks, he's mowing through the Celtics, and he's leading the Heat in scoring. And foot, we all know what happened. Foot happens, tears down his face. Ended up trying to come back in the finals. Ridiculous. This is just what a gangster this guy was, and that's the thing I'm always going to remember for him. Teeth on the table. Would step up to anybody. Sneakily was in a lot of fights. Go Google Goran Dragić fights. The man was an absolute menace. But it's crazy, the man's legacy, because you think about, like, what if Chris Bosh didn't get sick and he's there this weekend, and you think, what if Chris Bosh was able to play basketball? Would that team have been good enough to win a championship? It is the era of the Warriors. Maybe. Like, no other team was challenging LeBron and the Cavaliers. You had Raptors galore. Raptors, Hawks. What would that team have been, right? If they really got a shot. And then, D. Wade, still in that prime, still could dial it up. but you lose one of your best sidekicks. Like it's just a huge blow, and you're trying to infiltrate this new guy into the roster, and you're playing with this center who was undrafted and is like doing it with blocks. What would that team have been if they really got to fulfill it? If they really got to fulfill their destiny? And then the one that's even like less difficult to think about is just like, what if this dude didn't get hurt in the finals in 2020? What if he didn't? It's impossible. I know I asked that to Pat Riley after it happened, and that, gave this whole thing where he says you can't complain about it, you can't wonder about it, but even he had to say there's always going to be that asterisk. There's always going to be that on their side. He came out clever on their side, the Heat side. What if? What if? And I think that's the thing with Goran. It's like this man was unquestionably a basketball warrior, a legend, gave the Heat everything, played his ass off, never wanted to leave. I really hated that they traded him for Kyle Lowry. Hated that Kyle Lowry took his number. Hate that, I'm not a fan of Khalil Ware wearing number 7. Because I think it should be in the rafters. I do. I think he deserves that honor, because you're talking about this man having blood clots and plantar fasciitis, keeping him from unquestionably being one of the legends of the team. And I'm happy that he gets this weekend. I'm happy for Goran Dragić. He deserves all the praise. Beloved in that country. A big gateway. Does the team invest in a Nikola Jovic without him? I think it did. It was a kind of the Heat were not a big European squad, and I think he did change a lot of minds about that, because players over there, the stupid rumors that were, stupid stereotypes that were out there, soft, does not going to translate. This guy eradicated all of that with how hard he played and what a gangster he was. And so deserves this weekend. I'm happy for him. And it's cool that Chris Bosh is there, because there is it's tough not to think about that unity that they're always going to have with each other because of Chris Bosh's health. So I hope he enjoys it, deserves it. And in my mind, an unquestionable legend of the Miami Heat.